Good Saturday evening out there, all you Caniacs. In Caniac Nation, thanks for joining us this evening for session 79 of Caniac Sessions. I'm Griff.
I am Brandon.
And AB's not with us tonight. He's traveling, so
he's in my old neck of the woods.
Yeah. Yeah, so we are AB-less tonight, but that's okay. We'll push on. We got some stuff to talk about. So yeah, thanks for joining us. Hope everybody's having a good weekend so far. And you're enjoying the Cup final if you choose to watch. I know I'm enjoying it. I think it's been good so far. Are you watching it?
No, I'm just watching the Braves lose by 1 run every game for the last it's yeah.
Well, yeah, I've been watching it, and it's entertaining, I guess, as a fan of neither team, or really, I find myself pulling for the Oilers just because I've gotten to the point where I hate the Panthers so much. So last season I was kind of like, okay, I like Paul Maurice. I'd like to see him win a cup, but this year, Paul Maurice has kind of left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, that handshake line thing, I think that did that to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And, it's like one of the things with that, if I can just say real quick, it's not like Brind'Amour, like in the grand scheme of things, recently he played. It wasn't that long ago in the grand scheme of things that he hung his skates up.
Right.
So, and it's like that's part of what makes him a good coach is the fact he's recently removed from the game.
Yeah. I thought Whit from Spittin' Chicklets put it best. Like, he went off on this. I don't know if you listened to them or if you heard his little Paul Maurice rant, but yeah, I'm getting sick of this guy walking around acting like he's some freaking, hockey god or something.
With one cup in 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Just because he stepped into a good situation. Bill Zito built that team, not Paul Maurice.
Yeah, and that's one of the things to remember with Rod. He didn't step into the best situation.
No, absolutely not. He scraped by that first year to make the playoffs. That was a grind. And, another coach, if Bill Peters was there,
God forbid.
Like, you don't, yeah, they don't make the playoffs that year, in my opinion.
No, probably not. It's like they definitely don't go to the conference finals. That's for sure.
No. So yeah, I'm kind of over Paul Maurice and the whole Florida Panther idea. I'm ready for somebody else. So,
well, one thing with the Florida Panthers to look out for in the future.
My bad. You're right.
Yeah. One thing to look out for with the Florida Panthers in the future, if you think about it, though, how many of their players do they have that they drafted and developed? Barkov and Ekblad, I think that's it. Yeah, they got their cup. They might get another one this year, but the wheels are going to fall off at some point.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that day. Kind of like I don't know if wheels will fall off, but they'll regress. They'll be kind of like a Tampa, where they're just there, an aging core or whatever you want to call it. But anyway, enough of that. I hated this anyway. I'm done talking about it. I'm gonna quit. Okay. If you're watching on YouTube, we'll go ahead and get this out of the way. Go down and like the stream. Give us a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, again, this every week, 50% of our views are unsubscribed. So if you're watching, if you're a Canes fan, and you plan on being a Canes fan, just go ahead and subscribe. Just so that way you get notified every time we do this. If you are watching on X, go ahead and give us a like. A share would be great. And as always, we got the chat going, so it's already pretty active here. Yeah. So also at Caniac Sessions, we are promotional partners with SeatGeek. If you enjoy live events and you want to purchase tickets, you can go to SeatGeek.com and create an account. When you do, use promo code caniacsessions, one word. You can see it up in the top left of your screen. Use that promo code and you get $20 off your first ticket purchase. Helps everybody. Helps you, us, and SeatGeek. Take advantage of that. All right. So we're going to do this off season. We've got, I'm calling it the off-season series. This is the first session of an off-season series. We're just going to talk about some relevant topics, and then we've got the draft coming up. Then we've got free agency coming up. Who knows what's going to happen between now and July 1st? Can some trades drop? I don't really expect much to happen until after the Cup Final's over. Usually every year the GMs are pretty respectful of the Stanley Cup Final, and they want to wait to break any news until after. But it seems like there's a lot out there, Brandon. There's you hear some of these insiders that are hinting here, hinting there. We know that Dallas is in a weird position with their cap. They just fired Peter DeBoer. So who knows what's going to happen there? Then there's this news around the Buffalo Sabres that came out this morning. Friedman talking about the Buffalo's looking to make some moves. But what was weird about what they talked about today is we were kind of thinking that some of Buffalo's core may be on their way out. But the news that came out today, it looks like Buffalo may be trying to acquire players, not necessarily get rid of their core. Maybe kind of fill it out around the edges. So we'll see what happens there.
I can see why they would do that, because they've got a pretty loaded prospect pool themselves, like their organizational depth. I know I chirp the Sabres all the time on X because I don't like them. I'll never forget 2006. But truth be told, from an objective standpoint, they do have a really good prospect pool, and they're kind of like us. They can afford to move some of their futures, and they have plenty of time to rebuild that prospect pool over the next few years. The problem is they're not making the playoffs, though. But Tage Thompson is their best player. I don't know him personally by any means, but I imagine he's starting to get frustrated that he's not played a playoff game yet with them, and he's an incredibly good player. I'm still baffled that he got passed over for Four Nations.
Yeah. The thing with Buffalo is like, how long are you going to sell off? At some point you've got to stop, because it seems like they keep letting these players get out the door and then they go on and they do great elsewhere. If they can figure out how to put it together there, then, maybe they can be successful. But, I don't know if that seems like they're really trying to figure it out up there. So I don't know if there's going to be this mass exodus like we thought there might be. Maybe you might see an Alex Tuck go out the door just because he is on the final year of his, his contract coming up. So maybe he's a guy that, maybe he'll hang around for the season, but the trade deadline, if they're not looking at a good, a playoff run, he'll get traded. But I kind of take a step back on the Tage Thompson. I don't think they'll get rid of him.
I don't either. They would have to have a catastrophically bad start for that to even become an option. That would be like Carolina giving Aho up. It's like it would take something drastically going wrong for that to even be considered.
Right. And if he's young and to start a rebuild, which they've been doing for a decade, you don't want to. You're not going to get anybody else in the door that's better than him. So, Bill, I agree kind of with the news that Friedman reported today about Buffalo looking to fill out around the edges, and maybe you'll see some RFAs go out just to bring in some, some RFAs, some futures or whatever go out just to make bring in some win now players to help them. So enough on. I don't know why we're talking about Buffalo, but I guess it's because there's some players there that we could target. But
Alex, to our friends that Sound the Siren said it in the chat. Alex Tuck is someone that I've said for years, well before I started the Warning Take, well before I met you guys. Alex, even when he was still in Vegas, I was like, that is someone that I think would fit the Hurricanes on day one. He's one of those guys that, like, if he got a full training camp with the team, he'd come in and make an immediate impact. And he'd be so good on Aho's right that you could consider trying Jarvis as the 2C if you want to do an internal hire option there. Like, He would bring a lot to the lineup, a lot of physicality, very fast, great penalty killer, good defensively, and he can shoot. But I think what he's really good at is the greasy goals and going below the goal line to dig the puck out and make plays that way.
Yeah, agree. So yeah, we'll see what happens. That's just something I touched on this offseason that may pertain to our team, because there are some players there that have been, kind of either speculated or rumored. Maybe not rumored. Maybe that's not the right word, but just some, as we sit here and we go through possible moves that this organization can make this offseason, there are some players there that would fill some needs on this roster. So that's why we talk about it. Anyway, something's going to happen around this team this offseason, whether it's through trade or it's through free agency or a mixture of both. That's what I expect. I expect both.
I'm expecting both.
I expect them to make runs at some free agents, the Marners, the Ehlers, the who am I missing? Who am I forgetting? The Bennettts, if that happens. I don't even know. I don't know if they.
I don't think he's leaving Florida, man.
I don't think he's leaving Florida either, and I don't know.
I just don't see it happening.
I don't know if we. That's a topic for another time. I don't. Matter of fact, let's just talk about it. Why not?
Yeah. It's an off-season discussion, and that's a possibility in it.
If Sam Bennett hits the market, and Carolina has the opportunity to sign the guy, but the price tag is in excess of $10 million, because it seems like to me, if he goes to July 1, there's going to be a bidding war. He's a great player to have. He leads the playoffs in goals, but he's not necessarily that player in the regular season. Now, does that matter? Maybe not. Maybe it does.
For the Canes, I don't think so.
Yeah, maybe it doesn't to the Canes, but there's some debate out there to be had, whether or not this guy can be that effective player on another roster that's not Florida. And what I mean by that is there's just something about the Panthers and the way that those guys work together that kind of brings that whatever the word is, the edginess or whatever. I feel like if you take Matthew Tkachuk, I don't think Matthew Tkachuk was that player in Calgary.
No, he wasn't. He was an impactful player, but nothing like he is in Florida. Right. He totally turned that organization on its head in the good way by going there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I mean. Like, I don't know if you can pick and pull these guys and then put them somewhere else and they have that same effect. Like, I'm skeptical, because if you look at guys that come into that roster, Evan Rodriguez, right? He wasn't that player either. What, in Pittsburgh? He was in Pittsburgh, and then where was he before Pittsburgh?
Buffalo, I believe.
Was it Buffalo? He wasn't that player there either. And then he came to Florida, and it's like, hey, this is what's expected. That's just the team culture there. So I think it's a debate to be had. Is Sam Bennett going to be that player on another team? And we'll just use the Canes, who don't play that way. Does that, I mean, he could definitely be that player here, and because he's not a Florida Panther, he just sits in the penalty box all season. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, that's a distinct possibility. It's like he would go out of an environment that favors him and come into one that potentially could not. He loses that chemistry and everything like that. Because one of the things that you think about, like, okay, when you talk about any other free agent Carolina could potentially sign, you have an idea who they're going to play with. If Marner comes here, for example, he's probably playing with Aho. If Ehlers comes here, he's more than likely playing with Aho and Jarvis on the left wing there. Speaking of Marner, I want to comment on something about him real quick, because there's a lot of speculation around him. Mm-hmm. I do believe Carolina is going to make him a competitive offer, but I do not think they're going to be the highest bidder. What I mean by that is a team like Chicago or Anaheim is probably going to offer him more money ultimately. What Carolina will have in their favor is, hey, if you want to come to a win now situation with not a whole lot of media coverage and a lot less of the BS you put up with in Toronto, you probably get that with Carolina. you're probably getting offered $1 million less, but the cost of living is significantly lower in Raleigh than it is in Chicago or Anaheim. The taxes are lower, et cetera, et cetera. So that could potentially sway someone like him to take a little bit of a pay cut and still have a good amount going into his pocket and coming to Carolina. But there's definitely got to be a ceiling there, some sort of cutoff where the front office says, okay, this is too much money. We're taking too big of a risk bringing a guy like this in who's had some struggles in the postseason. So that's where you get that type of like juggling between someone like Bennett and someone like Marner. If the Hurricanes were to sign Sam Bennett in free agency, I don't know where you put him immediately. Like Marner, it's like, okay, what do? Put him with Aho. Put him with Aho now. See what they have.
Mm-hmm.
Bennett, on the other hand, I'm kind of like, okay, let's say Kotkaniemi's gone. Are you going to put him with, are you going to bump Jarvis down to play with him to, keep that speed, physicality, and grit together that those guys have? Or do you put him with, Stankoven? Do you put him with Svechnikov? Like, there's questions there. Whereas Marner or Ehlers, they're probably going to play with Aho.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree. And I don't know if, that's why I've kind of moved away from, the possibility of getting Sam Bennett. I don't know if it's the right move for us. One, because I'm not paying $10 million for him. I'm just not. Like, I just wouldn't do it. I mean, call me crazy. I know
I wouldn't either.
His playoff numbers are insane, but again, I think he is a product of his surrounding. And it's not guaranteed that he's going to go somewhere else and do the same thing.
I agree.
So
the one guy I was just
going to say that there's a big enough sample size outside of Florida. I mean, I just wouldn't take the risk.
Yeah, I think that would be riskier than even signing Marner, and I think that one's kind of risky too. The one guy I don't want to say I can guarantee he's going to be a Hurricane, but I would put money on Nikolai Ehlers signing with the Canes.
Yeah, I would as well.
He fits too well. He fills a need. We need another left wing, so that way I'm dying to see Svechnikov stay on the right side of the ice.
And I'll tell you this too. I think the odds on Jason Robertson playing in Carolina next season is high. I think those odds are better than a lot of people think, and it's because of the 2 first-round picks that we hold. And I don't know so I'll just cover this quickly before we move on. So in the Mikko Rantanen trade with Dallas, Carolina received 2 first-round picks. I think it was a 27 and a 29. 27, 28, 26, and 28.
I'll tell you in 2 seconds.
I think it was 20. Maybe it was a 26 and 28 first-round picks. Or I don't think they were consecutive years.
Okay, I'll tell you exactly what it is. The Hurricanes received Logan Stankoven, 2 first-round pick. I got to see what years they are, though.
I want to say it was 26 and 28. I don't think it was a
conditional first-round pick in the 28, a third-round pick in the 26, and a third-round pick in the 27. And Carolina's really good at utilizing late-round picks. Our best player was a 4th-rounder.
So 26 and 28, right?
Correct.
Yeah, Ethan. Thanks, Ethan.
Yes, thank you, Ethan.
So yeah, 26 and 28. And the thing about it is they're both conditional. So I think they're top 10 protected.
Mm-hmm.
So that means Dallas can't pick in 2020, or they can't trade away their pick in 27 or 29 for, like, say they were to, I don't even know if they have those picks, but even if they did, they couldn't get rid of them or utilize them in any other manner because they have to be there in case those first-round picks are retained. Does that make sense?
Correct.
So technically, Dallas has 4 years. The next 4 years of their first-round picks tied up. 2 of them belong to Carolina. 2 of them belong to them that cannot be utilized outside of the actual pick. So Dallas being in the situation they are with no cap, and their first round picks a mess for the next 4 years. If they get those two, or any combination of one or two of those picks back, it gives them a little bit more flexibility to do things in the future that they want to do, if they were to want to do. So if there is a Jason Robertson trade, it is a match made in heaven for them to come to Carolina and say, hey, can we have our 2 first-round picks back that we gave you in the Rantanen trade? You have plenty of cap space to take care of our guy here that we're going to send you. If you want to extend him or, whatever. I don't even know how many years. I think he has 1 year left.
I think he's got 1 year and then he hits RFA. I'll tell you in 2 seconds.
Yeah. So maybe, you guys got the money to pay the guy when he comes due. It's just, to me, it's a perfect match. Plus, we're looking for a dude that can score. We're looking for a 40-goal scorer, like legitimately looking for one. And so I just think it makes perfect sense. I mean, Dallas gets their first-round picks back, and we get the player we want. We've got the money to pay him. It just makes sense. And that's why I think there is a legitimate shot that this happens.
Yep, $7.75 million. He's entering the final year of a 4-year deal, and he would be an RFA in 2026 at the age of 26, and that would probably be his last season of his. He signed basically a bridge deal. Yeah. So I think that, because that money's got to come from somewhere that they signed for Rantanen, and that's $12 million a season. So that takes a big chunk out of that if they can get him. Another guy I would love for them to try and get from Dallas, if we're talking about somebody so one of the rationales about bringing Bennett is this team needs some more sandpaper. It needs some more toughness. Mason Marchment, if you could maybe find a way to get him, if you want to make a big groundbreaking blockbuster trade, if you bring those 2 guys in, then Canes would be in good shape, because Marchment's one of those guys you can move him up and down the lineup. If things aren't going well in the first line, Marchment's one of those energy players that you throw up there to kind of turn things around really quick. Yeah, I think he would be a great Hurricane.
He almost was.
Damn near.
But yeah, I mean, I just think that if I was a betting man, which I am, I would bet that Jason Robertson is a Carolina Hurricane come October.
So September. If you add Jason Robertson, Nikolai Ehlers, and Mason Marchment to this team, and I don't know if there would be enough room at that point to extend Eric Robinson, who I really like, but if I have a choice between Eric Robinson and Mason Marchment, I'm taking Marchment, and I have all the respect in the world for E-Rob.
Yeah, I mean, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You've got 11. You've got 11 forwards, 12 if you count in the dough. 11 forwards that are under contract for next season. So, you've got Roslovic, Robinson, and Jost going out the door, unless, again, like you said, they were to bring them back. So I don't know. I mean, I know that they said in the exit interviews that Robinson has spoken to the front office, and maybe he's if you bring in a top 6 winger or a 2C, that's your 12th forward there. So, I mean, is he going to be your 13th forward? Is he interested in? And then if you were to bring in Marchment as well, that's 13 forwards. So unless you move somebody else out, and maybe they're planning on doing that, maybe they trade a Jesperi Kotkaniemi or buy him out or whatever. I mean, that's a possibility. With a lot of cap space and the cap going up, we could see a KK buyout if they can't find a trade for him.
I think they can find a trade for KK. I really do. I think that you wouldn't get a massive return for him, but I think that a team like San Jose that needs to shore up their depth, and KK could actually go play the role that he's best cut out for, as being a 3C. If Jordan Staal had retired already, trading Jesperi Kotkaniemi is probably not even really getting discussed. But it's either he plays second line or he plays fourth line, and he's not cut out for either one of those. Fourth line because honestly, he's just too good for that. He's more skilled of a player than that, and he's making too much money. And second line center, it's like he's not that guy. And everyone knows that I'm like the biggest Jesperi Kotkaniemi believer in the world. I will be his last fan alive. But it's just he's not that guy. The only problem with that is 2 seasons from now, the third line center problem is going to have to get solved. Is Jankowski, if he gets extended, is he good enough to step up into that role? Potentially, yeah. But it's not something that I would place a whole lot of stock in him being able to do.
I like Jankowski as a 4C.
I want him to stay there. That's the perfect role for him.
Yeah, I agree. And I just think that if you're going to fill, if you're really trying to bring in a 2C, I think KK's got to go, man. I just do, because
there's no other way to do it.
I don't want to see, like, I really think Jankowski needs to look. Jankowski's got the cheaper price tag, and I think that him and KK are just plug and play. Like, does it matter? Like, I don't know if it does. And I don't know, man. I really like Jankowski.
I do too. But it's just like, as long as he's not expected to elevate in a role past fourth line center, yeah. I think that the Canes would be really good to go just doing that. But yeah, there's no way you bring in a second line center and not move Kotkaniemi out in some capacity or another in the process, whether that's through trade or through buyout. It's like at times when I saw Kotkaniemi play with, like, Robinson, Carrier, guys like that, he looked really good. But when he tries to step up into a more scoring centric role is when he has problems. When they tell him, hey, go out there and hit people, then he's fine. And that's a lot, or that's a kind of a little bit, below what you ask a guy who's making $4.82 million a season to do.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm just wondering, like, what's the long-term plan to replace the 3C when Jordan Stahl's time is up, unless he extends again, which I don't know if that's going to be a good idea. That's something that would have to be looked at the time, but I think he's getting ready to hit. Both of his brothers have already retired. So
yeah,
all 3 of them, I should say.
I don't believe he'll sign another contract. I think this will be it.
Yeah. And we got to make room for Aho to be the captain. Like, he is it.
Yeah, I think this is it.
Yeah, it's essentially Aho's, like, from what I understand about it, taken over a lot of the captaincy dynamic already as it is. Jordo's still wearing the letter, but everyone knows Aho is that guy because, and they were grooming him for that for a long time. They sat him in the locker room next to Justin Williams.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But quickly, and then we'll get on to our main topic here. Just quickly, projected cap space for this offseason is currently just short of $28.5 million. That could go up or down depending upon, does KK get bought out? Does he get traded? Whatever. Do they re-sign Eric Robinson? Do they re-sign Brent Burns or Orlov or, any of these free agents? I don't know. But yeah, as things stand right now, with none of the UFAs re-signed and everybody under contract currently still on the roster, you got $28.5 million of cap space to basically bring in once. Because, if you plug in Nikishin and Morrow, you've got 6 defensemen under contract. If you bring up Bradley Nadeau, you've got 11 forwards. So you're looking, and your 2 goalies are both signed. So you're looking at $28.5 million and one singular roster spot that you would have to fill. Okay. Have to fill. Not saying that, the players that are currently on that list are, what of the quality that we want to continue. But I'm just saying, if you wanted, 4 bodies, you only need one individual.
Correct.
And that is $28.5 million of cap space as is. So that's the landscape for that. Now, some comments here, and then we'll get talking about Burnsy. B. Rod Brind'Amour said he thinks Burns can adapt his game as he gets older, like filling in on penalty kills. Maybe drop him down to second or third pairing if he's cheap. We'll talk about that. But I think the most pressing issue, B says, is if he leaves, who's going to do the Connecticut water filter commercials? Would hate to be in Tulski's shoes. That's a Hey, that's some big shoes to fill, man. Trent from Connecticut.
I think that for that's tough, man, because Burns' personality just fits that so well. I almost wanted to get one of those shirts, the one that has the one that he wears in the commercial. I saw one wearing one when I came to hang out with you guys at Game 3.
They're selling them.
I think I'm going to get one.
They're selling them.
I think that that is an important question. That's like trying to replace Hamilton the pig, man. It's not easy.
They're going to have to find something else. I don't know. Crispy crawfish. Go ahead. What are you saying?
I could see someone like Svechnikov being the Connecticut water guy, a little bit more dry as far as what he says, but I can't. Maybe Ghost could do it.
I don't know.
That's a tough decision.
Something about the beard and the tattoos, man.
Yeah, he looks like someone who would come to fix your water.
He looks like a damn plumber.
He does.
He does.
We don't really have anybody else on the team who's just like, it's like, because this guy kills his own food most of the time.
Yeah, he's a plumber. Crispy Crawfish says, then he's either playing with Nikishin or Ghost. Neither would cover his many giveaways. I think you put one too many minis in there. Matthew P, we already saw him. He says, good evening, all. Sound the siren. What's up, fellas? Matthew P says, Cup finals have been incredible. Agree? He says, Matthew P again, I hate the Oilers too, but the thought of Jeff Skinner getting a ring before us is just so wrong. He hasn't even played. How many playoff games did he play? 1? 2?
Not
maybe?
Much. He
hadn't played in these finals games. Hate the Panthers. Sorry. That's okay. Let's see what else we're going to get to here. I'm going to skip through some of these. Sorry. Katie Bartlett's with us. Duchesne at 2C would be worth a look at a reasonable price. He wants term more than top dollar. Yeah, but he's like 37, right? 36 or 37, right? Is he? How old is he? He's got to be 36, I think. And see, that's the problem. I don't want to give term to a 36-year-old, but I mean, maybe worth a look. Yeah, maybe it would be. Yeah, Matthew P says he's a bit skeptical on Duchesne. He's getting old fast. Yeah, I tend to agree. But then I'm going to sit here and make a case for Brent Burns.
I'm trying my best to warm myself up to the idea of it. I really am. But it's like, it's also different, though, because we're talking about Burns potential. We're talking about Burns playing a reduced role and getting matchups that aren't as tough as what he's had in the past with the Canes. Whereas Duchesne, if he's a second line center, he's getting tough matchups at home and on the road, no matter what the situation is. So it's hard to rationalize, like, not to mention, okay, let's say we do bring Burns back, then bringing someone like Duchesne, and if we want to keep the average age of the team in, it has to be off the table.
Yeah, maybe. She says that he's 34, so that's not as bad as I thought.
That's not that bad. I thought he was older than that.
I did too. Maybe, I'd give him maybe a 3-year contract. I'd be okay with. Pops is with us. He says, is Marner becoming a free agent? We'll cover this and then we'll get into the Burns talk, Brandon. But yes, Mitch Marner, as of now, and the reports that are out there, he is going to July 1st. But apparently, according to the insiders, Toronto will be in consideration in free agency, which I don't believe. I think if he's going to sign with Toronto, he would do it before July 1st and get his 8th year.
It would have been done by now, I think.
Yeah, I don't. And the rumors out there are there's a handful of teams that he is interested in that really have the ability to bring him in currently, unless some team were to go out there and clean out or clear out their locker room to bring him in, which could happen. We saw Tampa let Steven Stamkos go last year so they could bring in Gensel.
Yeah.
But LA Kings look like a team that he could wind up at, that apparently are heavily interested in him and who he is heavily interested in as well. Carolina has been a team rumored out there that wants to make a push that he may have some interest in. I think Vegas is one as well, but Vegas is one of those teams that would have to do some work on the front end in order to afford him, which, look, I've learned to not put anything by Vegas. Like, they're one of those teams that you look at and say, well, they can't do this, and then all of a sudden they do it.
Yeah, if they decide they want Marner, then Mark Stone's going to stub his toe really bad, and that'll be the end of that.
Yeah, something will. Yeah, they'll make it happen if they can. And I think and there's been some word out there that maybe Utah is a potential landing spot for him.
That's part of the reason they're looking at moving Matias Maccelli out.
Yeah. So I don't believe he's staying in Canada. There's been some speculation that maybe he would wind up in Ottawa or something like that. I don't see him going to Ottawa, but you never know. But it looks like to me, I think the favorite teams for him to go to are going to be either LA, Vegas, Utah, or Carolina. I think it's going to wind up being one of those four. And then there's like a dark horse out there of an Anaheim or a Chicago. But he would have to be okay with not winning initially and being part of a rebuild definitely in Chicago, but Anaheim maybe is a year or two away.
Yeah. And the thing with Anaheim, they could have made the playoffs this season if their special teams were a little bit better. Their power play and their penalty kill both were atrocious. 5-on-5, they were not that bad.
Yeah. Pop said, I think he would fit here to you. Yeah, he would do fine here. My only concern is is he a goal scorer?
He's more of a playmaker. That's the whole thing. That was part of the rationale of why the Canes let Teravainen go. The Canes didn't need another two-way winger that likes to pass the puck in perfect opportunities to shoot, because there are times where Teravainen didn't shoot the puck, and I'm kind of like, dude, come on.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's a good way to describe it.
Matthew P. Marner is a better turbo. Absolutely.
Yeah, he's a much better turbo. That's a good way to put it. If you do bring someone like Marner to the Canes and you put him with Aho, maybe Aho will be like, okay, I need to stop passing it so much and start shooting it more like I used to. Because till this day, I believe Sebastian Aho's legitimate best season was 2019-2020. He had 38 goals and there were still 14 games left when the stoppage happened. Yeah. And he didn't hesitate to shoot at all that year. He had the fine, I'll do it myself mentality almost every time he had the puck in the offensive zone. Him playing with someone like Marner could potentially bring him back to that mentality.
Or they'll just sit there and pass the puck back and forth.
Oh, yeah, they might play pong with each other. It's like the joke that Kuznetsov made about him and Teravainen being together. He's like, I'm surprised that they did that because they thought we'd just pass it to each other the entire game, which kind of did happen.
Yeah. Pop says, which line? He would absolutely play with Aho, at least.
Yes, without a doubt.
Yeah. He is probably one of the top 3 to 5 wingers in the NHL.
I agree.
In there somewhere. We'll see though. I remain skeptical. You guys know this from our group chat. I don't think he's going to wind up here. I would bet. I think he's going to wind up in LA. I agree with that. I think he's going to be an LA King. Yeah. Real quick, Ethan Reed says, is there any validity possibility for Tage Thompson trade? I see Mitchell Buffalo's putting up. We talked about this at the beginning of the show, Ethan. So if you just rewind, this will be on YouTube. And the replay will be up on X after we're done here. If you just want to scroll back and watch the beginning, if you were a little bit late, we talked about that. Matthew P. Last comment, and then we're going to get on to Burnsy here. He says, Marner and Aho killing penalties together, a guy can dream.
That would be pretty cool. That's Marner, a lot of shorthanded goals, probably.
Marner, Aho, Jarvis, Slavin. If you wanted to not have 2 defensemen. But anyway,
if you're in a game critical situation and you're on a penalty kill and you got to like get a goal to tie it, that's the 3 guys I'd put out there. Or the 4 guys I'd put out there for sure.
All right. Let's get on to this Brent Burns talk. So, lots of talk, especially after the exit interviews, about Brent Burns and our defensive core. And it's created this debate around, the fan base. And to me, there's very little, there's very few people that are kind of like in the middle. Either you're absolutely let him walk, send him to China, like this guy, like, no, he's not re-signing here. He's got to go, right? Or you're either, I love Burnsy, he's got a place here, re-sign him. And there's very few that are in the middle, like, well, and maybe there's more than I realize, but, and maybe it's just the extremes that are the loudest. But
the send him to China crowd is pretty loud.
Yeah, they are. They absolutely are.
The last time I was on the send a hurricane to China crowd was Dylan Coughlin. That's how long it's been since I've been on the send him to China crowd.
Well, we know our buddy Sam Driscoll is ready to kick Burns to China.
Oh, and Kokaniemi too.
Yeah, but
he'd send him to China without his bags.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're going to talk about this, and Brandon, I know you're more along the lines of, I don't think you're as extreme. I mean, I guess we could just call it left and right? You're not as extreme, get rid of him as you were maybe a few weeks ago. I think you've kind of,
after his playoff performance, I'm kind of like, I'm still against bringing him back, but I'm not going to start like a protest over him coming back.
Yeah. And, I'm kind of on the side of like, I'd like to see him back. And we've kind of debated this a little bit in our group chat, with us and a couple of our buddies and all that. But we're just going to talk about it here. And feel free, if you're listening, hit us up in the chat. Let us know your thoughts. Just, guys, please keep it like respectful. I get so sick of people on X all the time. Like, I can't post anything without somebody coming in acting like they're freaking, like, acting like Paul Maurice, the gift from the hockey gods. Look, everybody's got their own opinion, but don't be a freaking jerk off. You know what I mean? Just I love having conversation, but don't get anyway. I had to say that. But yeah, hit us up in the chat and let us know your thoughts about it as well. But Brandon, I'll let you start here. You can talk about whatever you want about Burnsy, the case for or the case against, and I'll kind of go go off you here.
So before we do that, actually, there's 2 things I'd like to do real quick. One, can we look at the slide showing his regular season stats and then show the tweets from Adam about his numbers and everything? And then I think that we should both make our cases from there, because you and I are actually not super far apart on this.
Okay.
I'm just more of the... Go ahead.
You want me to bring this tweet up on the screen?
Bring the slide up first, and then we'll bring the tweet up. Just because I want people to see, like, there's a big contrast between what he did in the regular season and what he did in the playoffs. So keep in mind, this guy was 39 when the season started, and he's 40 now. And he still managed to play every single game. He had some bad moments, but he had a few good ones as well. People were talking about, oh, well, he's not hitting as much as he used to. Burnsy has never been the most physical player. He's more of a separate the puck from the player than separate the player from the puck type of guy, kind of like Slavin is in that regard. The offense has definitely declined.
Yeah.
5-on-5, though, on ice goals against per 60 was 2.8. That's actually not that bad. And we're talking about how he's changed his game to be more of a shutdown type of guy. I know that's one of the things that you're going to talk about with him potentially being paired with Ghost, which I think is a legitimate thing to consider. Now, when you're looking at his penalty killing numbers, they're actually not that bad either. On ice goals against 4.9 per 60. On ice save percentage, 88.1 for penalty killing, and that's all situations. That's 5-on-4, 5-on-3, 4-on-3. Like, is it the best numbers? Is it what he's capable of when he was younger? Absolutely not. But the thing about it is, this is a guy who already knows the system. And to factor in the human element here, because that does matter, this is a guy who has players over to his house. He takes the new guys under his wing, the young kids. He's really good with them. He's really important to the locker room. He's important to the culture. So even setting this stuff aside, there is value of some sort to bringing him back. Where my concerns are is where his speed has fallen off and the offenses went away. So if he does transition into a purely shutdown role, these numbers are fine.
Yeah.
And if he's doing it with less minutes, these numbers are fine. The thing I'm worried about is that, let's say we do, where we just say, okay, we're going with the 6 guys we have, but Walker with Slavin and Burnsy goes with Ghost. Then if that doesn't work out, then Ghost is probably back with Walker and Burns is back with Slavin. And we're essentially right back where we started, except Orlov out and Nikishin in. So that's the only other things to consider with that. As far as what he does for the team on a leadership level and what he brings to the table with his experience, there's no debate there. Those are important qualities. It's strictly, and you've brought this up before, a lot of it is just mental mistakes. And I think that if he goes into this year knowing, okay, this is it, he'll leave it all on the line, and he may have a better season than he's had for the last 2. That is a distinct possibility. There's no way to look at Brent Burns and say, a lot of people say he's washed, he's done, all this other stuff. I disagree with that. I think he's still a serviceable NHL player. The question is he a serviceable NHL player on a team that's trying to win a Stanley Cup starting this year? That's where I think that there's that disparage, or the discrepancy there is he's not that player anymore. That doesn't mean that he can't adapt in other ways. But if I'll tell you this, I would bring Brent Burns back before I'd even entertain trading for Erik Karlsson. There's a lot of worse options out there than Brent Burns. Now, then you talk about the better options potentially, because you don't know until you try it if it's actually a better option. Then you start talking about Rasmus Andersson or someone like that to take that role. That's where I think that the fear of the unknown kind of sets in.
I'm going to bring up this tweet here.
This is important. This shows the contrast of like what he did before. That's one of the reasons I wanted to show that. This shows the contrast of like what he was doing before versus how he's like adapted his game. He fell off a cliff offensively. He's not as fast as he was, but he still did some things well. Yeah.
I want to read this tweet by Adam Gold, and then I'm going to provide my thoughts here. Adam says, and I'm just going to read it. Adam says, I have no idea if the Canes are going to bring back Brent Burns or not, team friendly or not. I know Burns would like to return. I know the head coach loves what he brings to the ice and the culture. However, the notion that Burns would just automatically slot in next to Jacob Slavin is absurd. The idea the head coach is incapable of slotting him properly is silly. First of all, Burns is even a realistic candidate to be on a top pairing. Either the front office failed to acquire a worthy... Wait a second, I said that wrong. First of all, if Brent is even a realistic candidate to be on a top pairing, either the front office failed to acquire a worthy first right-hand defenseman, or there was an injury. Next, 30 defensemen in NHL amassed at least 180 5-on-4 shorthanded minutes last year. This is important. Burns was first, number 1 in fewest goals allowed, highest goals for percentage, fewest expected goals against, highest expected goals for, and fewest high danger chances against on the penalty kill shorthanded. Number 1 in all of those categories. Every quantifiable metric that matters, shorthanded, the guy was number 1.
In the league.
In the entire NHL. And that is a very important piece of the best penalty kill in the league and the best penalty kill in the playoffs. Burns was, in other words, an elite penalty killer piece of the best penalty kill unit on earth, just like I just said. And for those screaming about his power play usage, he was 43rd in the NHL in power play time on ice. He played nearly 100 fewer minutes than Gostisbehere, who played in a dozen fewer games. Furthermore, at 5-on-5, 137 NHL defensemen played at least 1,000 minutes. Burns was, and this may be I know understand some of this may be skewed for the Slavin effect, but he was 7th in CF percentage. That's Corsi 4?
Correct.
Corsi 4 percentage, 18th in expected goals for percentage, and 16th in high danger chances for percentage. And Adam goes on to say he doesn't say this to say he's great. He should absolutely be brought back, should anchor the right side of the blue line, etc. He just says he presents these numbers to the masses to dispel the utter nonsense that Brent Burns isn't still good at his job. He absolutely is. Is he great? No, but he can still play a role in Stanley Cup contender. Does he turn the puck over too many times? Yes. But that factored into these numbers, and so he must do enough to mitigate these mistakes. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so otherwise solid. In the penalty kill stats, okay, that was just a correction. And then I replied with the cooking meme. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So
we have a wok like that we use. It's not that big, but we make stir fry and stuff with it. It's awesome.
Yeah. So here's my thoughts. I believe, okay, Brent Burns is a self-aware person, man. He is. He'll be the first one to tell you the areas that he needs to clean up. And when I watch him play this year, the mistakes that he was making throughout the season, they weren't, to me, I know the offense has fallen off, but when I'm talking about defensively here and his giveaways, they're mental. They're not because he's physically unable to play the sport. They are mental mistakes that he hasn't always made throughout his career. And I believe the reason is because he is absolutely trying to tailor his game to his new strengths and new weaknesses at the age of 40. And, he came out and said in his exit interview that, after going through surgery 2 off seasons ago, coming back last year he was hurt. Last offseason he had surgery. And then this year he felt pretty good. And anyway, I just think that a lot of the mistakes that we were seeing is him trying to change himself to meet the needs of the team based upon his abilities. And I honestly believe I don't think he should play with Slavin, but if he comes back on a team-friendly deal to play third pair with Shane Gostisbehere, a couple things. One, I think it's possible. Everybody says, "Oh, Burns he's going to get burned. They're going to get burned as a pair." Yeah, they would 2 years ago when Brent Burns was an offensive defenseman, but I believe that he is learning and has done a good job. And I thought the playoffs was evidence of this, that he can be a shutdown defenseman to the point where he can play third pair minutes and matchups and be effective with a Shane Gostisbehere. And here's the thing. If you say, well, no, we need to go out and sign a third pair defenseman, assuming Sean Walker bumps up and plays with Slavin, which I'd love to see. There's always a chance you can go out and get a right-hand defenseman that is, he's a number one to play with Slavin. Like that's possible. And then, if that's the route they want to go, then you got to let Burns go. Okay. But if they want, if they go into this year and they say, hey, we want Sean Walker to get a run with Jacob Slavin, which I think that a lot of people are going to, I think it's going to be excellent. I think Sean Walker's got another level that he can get to.
When we get the chance, I got a lot to say about Walker playing with Slavin when we get to it.
We'll get there. But anyway, if that's the route you want to go, you want to put Walker up there, but you still let Burns walk and you sign another right-handed defenseman to play on that third pair, are you really going to bring in somebody in that position for that price that is better than the option that's already here. I'll just throw a name out there. A couple of guys that have played on our third pair over the last several years. Calvin DeHaan, Ian Cole. Who else? Help me out here. I'm drawing blanks.
I mean,
That's
Chatfield
good.
did at one point, but he bumped up.
Correct.
It's like you can have really good players like that for relatively cheap down there. It's like, I know I've talked about Henry Yokiharu maybe being that guy.
Yeah.
But you would probably still ultimately pay Burns less, and he wouldn't want any term.
Right. You could probably have 1 year contract, maybe.
Yeah, and he wouldn't ask for more than $1 million, I don't think.
Maybe not. Or maybe, maybe he does a 2x1, maybe 2 years, 1 million each, or maybe 1 year at 2 million. Like, I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas out there, but I just think that, like, he's still better than the next best option at third pair. And I don't believe, a lot of these people out there, like Rod steps on his own feet. Rod will play him with Slavin because Rod doesn't have that. Like, I don't believe that either.
Well, Rod also said stuff about he didn't want to play Burns with Slavin. He just kind of had to because of the roster being constructed the way that it was.
Yes. And if you remember, go ahead.
See, I was under the impression until he said that, because he never said anything about that during the regular season that I saw anyway. I was kind of like, does he want to have this for a top pairing? And then at the end of the season, when he says, no, I don't want that for a top pairing, but I very much want Burns back, that's what kind of started warming me up to the idea of, okay, maybe bringing him back is not the worst idea.
I just think that if you take the intangibles and you add him to what he is on the ice, man, it just makes sense. Like, he's still better than the next best thing, in my opinion. He doesn't need to be taught the system. He knows it. He's played in it now for 3 years. He's got relationships with all the guys in the room. He's, off the ice, he is a mentor. He is a leader. You don't have to wear a letter to be a leader. If you go and you watch, I don't know if, like, sometimes I follow the players or whatever on Instagram, and sometimes I'll post stories, and they'll be like, they'll be at like a team party and they're in Burnsy's house or whatever. Like, I don't know. And then,
he throws parties for them all the time.
Parties, has them over to eat. His kids are in the locker room after the games and on the bench at warm-ups. And I just think that there's too much good just to say he turns the puck over. Yes, he does turn the puck over. But if you put him on a third pair and you get him matchups, I think that he's not as bad as he is labeled. And all right, I'm for it. Bring him back. And look, put him on the third pair. Take him off the power play. The 2 power play quarterbacks next year needs to be Gostisbehere and Nikishin, and however you want to, first, second, whatever, however they want to shake that out is fine. But I think Nikishin needs to run one of your power play units, and we all know, obviously Gostisbehere can. So I think Burns' days are over on the power play. He can play third pair. He can kill penalties, and yeah, I'm for it. Go ahead.
So you're actually getting me thinking about this a whole lot. So if I had a crystal ball to look in and I could see that Burns has transformed his game, which he did for the most part this past season, if he's transformed his game into being a third pair guy who's going to get most of his matchups against bottom 6 forwards, and he can play with Ghost and still allow Ghost to play that puck possession game and to contribute offensively and all that type of stuff, with him chipping in a point here and there himself. If I knew for a irrefutable fact that because it's a distinct possibility he can play that role, but if I knew it for an irrefutable fact, I'd be like, okay, bring him back. Don't give him more than a year, in my opinion, but then I would say go ahead and pull the trigger on it. My only hang up is I'm not 110% convinced he can do that. I'm not saying that it's not a possibility. It totally is. But when it comes to the spectrum of options of what defenseman you add, Burns should not be at the bottom. He should be in the middle, is what I think, because there are worse options. Like people talking about, trading for Erik Karlsson. Erik Karlsson hasn't played well since his Norris season. Right. And that's going to cost you more money. And if you're telling me who's better defensively between those two, it has always been Burns. Even before Karlsson had the injury where they took out like a third of his ankle bone or whatever it was. If it comes down to options, if one of them is bring Rasmus Anderson in, or bring Aaron Ekblad in to fill that role, then at that point I would be okay with parting with Burns. But if they can't do anything to improve the defense through trade and free agency, because people talk about trade proposals all the time, the other side has to accept it, and then the league has to approve it. There's all kinds of hurdles with that. Trust me, there's plenty of things that people dream up on NHL 25 that they would love to be able to do in real life, and they just can't. This is the reality of the situation. So I understand your rationale of saying put him with Ghost. He won't be playing as many minutes, which I think that was his biggest problem this season. He was pulling heavy minutes and tough matchups. If you take the heavy minutes, the tough matchups, and the power play 2 employment out of it, that warms me up to the idea of bringing him back a lot more. So I will officially change my position.
Oh.
If option C is to, as long as Slavin goes with Walker, and if you don't bring in another significantly better defenseman, if you're looking for a cost-effective option, if you bring Brent Burns back and put him with Ghost and you put Slavin with Walker, you've saved yourself a lot of money. The percentage of the cap being spent on defense has not gone up a whole lot. In fact, it's gone down with Burns' previous contract coming off and Orlov's previous contract coming off. Because a few weeks ago, I was like, if they bring Brent Burns back, I will jump out this window. Now I'm kind of like, okay, if they bring Brent Burns back, I've got my skepticism about it, but I would have this with almost anybody. If they were to bring him back and put him in that capacity, there's the potential for him to play well. I'm not saying he will, not saying he won't. But I don't think it's the end of the world if they do. I would only be mad if they gave him more than $1 million and more than a year for term. And then maybe he goes and he has a really good year in that role. And they're like, you know what? Bring him back for one more year. That's what Martinook's going to be doing in a few years. It's going to be constant 1-year deals over and over again until he finally retires when he's 53 years old. So I could see Burns doing something like that. Like I said, it's not my first option, but it's sure as hell is closer to the top than the bottom.
Yeah.
So I've warmed up to it a little bit, but I was never on the send Burns to China bandwagon, because if he wants to keep playing, he's totally capable of it. I just don't know if him doing it on a cup contending team is the answer. So,
well,
all intangibles and locker room things considered, that's a huge net positive right there. The only questions are, because there's no questions about what he brings to the locker room. That's a definitive net positive. If he can slot into that third pair shutdown defenseman role and keep bottom 6 forwards and third pair defenseman on the other team from putting up a bunch of numbers, be an emergency penalty killer if you need him, because I don't think he should serve in that capacity as a main guy anymore when you have Walker that has shown he can do it.
Penalty kill, you said?
Yeah, I know he was really good on it, but I would have him as an auxiliary for that and let Walker step into that role, because there's going to be times where, like, if you want to reduce his minutes, that's one of the ways you're going to need to do it. And you also want to keep Slavin and Walker together. If they're playing 5-on-5 together a lot, you want to keep them rotating through the penalty.
He's still in the rotation, too. I think.
Oh, yeah, he's still in the rotation, but I would make him the 5th guy on that list as far as defensemen go killing penalties. So if Walker's in the box or Slavin takes his 2 penalties a year, then Burns is the first guy I put out there instead. So I'm warmer to the idea than I was before.
Yeah. I think it's going to happen. I think.
Oh, I've already accepted it months ago. It's going to happen. I was just
unless you know. I mean, unless a top pair defenseman, right-handed defenseman falls in their lap, or they realize they can acquire one through trade, I think that's why it hasn't happened yet. I think they're trying to get a view of what is out there, or what they could potentially pull off, because you're not going to find anybody in free agency. I don't think. I don't think there's anybody out there in free agency that's a top defenseman. I think it's Like who?
Ekblad is about the only one.
But look. I don't think he's leaving Florida either.
They're gonna have to do some cap gymnastics if they're gonna keep him and Bennett both.
Ekblad said the other day, they asked him, he's like, I bleed for Florida or something. Which was a pretty strong statement.
Maybe he made a good point.
What, this one? He said, I think they'll go to free agency and then circle back to Burns.
That's basically what they did with Freddie Anderson, not this last time, but last time.
But I don't know if there's a guy in free agency that is a right-hand defenseman that would play with Slavin. Like, who? I mean, is Dmitry Orlov the top defenseman in free agency this year? I mean, who's out there? I don't know if you can pull it up quick.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
I don't believe that there's anybody that's worth. I mean, there's a bunch of guys that you could play on your third pair, but again, I don't think they're, that's the next best to me.
Okay, here's the top 12. Come on, load. Marner, Bennett, Ehlers, Tavares, Ekblad, Marchand, Besser. This is going to be all forwards.
Yeah, I mean, Ekblad's there.
Gavrikov, but he's a left-handed shot, I believe.
Matthew P says, although we could always offer Sheep Bouchard. Yeah, if we get
I'm not opposed to that.
We'd have to get our picks back.
Yeah, we just have to get the third back from Utah. Mikhail Granlund, I think, is someone Carolina could look at for a stopgap at the second line center.
Yeah, for everybody saying offer sheet Evan Bouchard, you've got to remember that the compensation for an offer sheet of that dollar value, you have going back the other way, I believe, is a first, second, and a third round pick.
It might take more than that to pry him out of there.
Well, they have to be
your picks
or organic to your organization. You can't send out a third round pick that you acquired in a trade with whatever team last season. It's got to be your own. And currently Utah owns our third round pick for this year. So you can't, unless you want to offer him an offer sheet over 12 million or 11 million or whatever that, which I don't know. But I think that's that top tier where I believe it's 3 or 4. Is it 3 first round picks have to go back the other way? 4 first, maybe.
Yeah, and I think we can do that one. One other thing with Bouchard, there's probably a better possibility for the Canes to acquire him through trade, considering the Oilers are about to, give McDavid the biggest contract in the history of the National Hockey League. They're going to have to make some room. Mm-hmm. And if they move Bouchard out to make that happen, then if they don't move Bouchard, they're going to have to move 2 or 3 players out. If they move Bouchard, they maybe only have to move him and a depth piece of some sort to make that work. So that's the other thing with that. I like the idea of Evan Bouchard playing with Slavin because there's not a defenseman in the league with a better shot than Evan Bouchard. There's just not. And his defensive game has come a really long way in the last couple of years. But like I said, bringing Burns back is not my first option, but it's not near the bottom.
Yeah. I agree. Again, if you can't get, an Ekblad in free agency, if he goes to free agency, or you can't trade for Rasmus Anderson, or someone of that caliber that can play there, and you can just allow Walker to stay on the third pair with Gostisbehere, then I think it's fine because I think he's better than Joe Schmo that you can get out of free agency that's a third pair right-hand defenseman for $800K. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the guy that I was looking at to get for the third pair would cost more than $800K, and that's Henry Jokiharju. Now, granted, I would still go that route before I would bring Burns back personally, but it will cost more money.
Who says we're assuming that Burns would have to play with Gostisbehere? Who says that your second pair can't be a Gostisbehere Chatfield?
And then have Nikishin and Burns play the other pair. Yeah. Because the first, second, and third pair thing with Carolina is not as relevant as it is with other teams. The reason I say that is even though you've got an elite guy on your top pair on the left side and Slavin, they still distribute the minutes 5-on-5 pretty evenly.
Yeah. And, we don't really know what Nikishin is going to be. I mean, we have an idea of what Nikishin is going to be, but we don't really know what Nikishin is going to be midway through next season or late next season. Like, if he develops into a absolute monster, in the NHL, in the system or whatever, if he becomes like, which I think could happen pretty quick.
I do too.
And, who knows? Maybe we're here midway. Maybe we're here in January and we're like, this guy's a beast, and maybe he can play with Burns. Maybe he can. I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out there. But yeah, all in all, to wrap this up, I think it's going to happen. I think I'll put a number on it. I think it's 70-30. I think it's 70-30. And there's 70% chance that it happens, 30% chance it doesn't. And I think within that 30% is somebody just falls into their lap and then they have no choice. But I think it's done before July 1. I think either they are going, if they're going to make a trade, I think it's going to happen before free agency, because I think the organization wants to know exactly what they need and how much money they have to spend on July 1st.
I'm expecting anything big that's going to happen is going to be at the draft. That's what I think is going to happen.
That could be, but that's what we thought last year too, and it didn't.
Yeah. And then also, as far as the 70-30, I'm actually 80-20 on it. Like, I've kind of felt for a long time that he was coming back. It's one, the fact that Rod likes him so much. And like, I don't know the exact dynamics of the front office and Rod, but it seems like he is more in, they tend to listen. There's a lot of front offices who won't listen to their coaches as much as Carolina's front office will listen to Rod. They'll be like, hey, just here's what you got. Good luck. Whereas Rod, I think that they value his input more because of how connected he is to the organization, how good of a coach he is. So I think that that's a factor. It's kind of like they'll actually, it's likely that they sit down and talk to him to a greater extent than other front offices do their coaches. So I think that's why I think it's an 80-20 type of situation as opposed to a 70-30 situation, because, we already know Rod wants him back. So that's one of those things where the front office is kind of like, well, should we bring him back? Well, Rod wants him back. And that's a big factor into regards of whether they actually go through with bringing him back. But I still don't think it's the best option, but I also don't think it's the end of the world either.
Yeah. Real quick here, Sound the Siren says both 3782 NMC kicks in July 1st. KK's is only a 10-team no trade.
10-team. And I don't think we need to trade Svechnikov.
And Svech's is only Svech's is a 10-team approved list, which means he's got 10 teams that he says that he will go to. KK's is only a 10-team no trade list.
Yeah. So basically, Svech submits his at the beginning of the season, and then the other 22 or 21 teams on the list are fair game for him to get traded to.
Correct. And no move clause is when they can't be traded, they can't be sent to the minors, they can't be waived without the player's approval. Which William Carrier has, by the way.
Yeah, but William Carrier, and I say this with all the respect in the world, he's kind of a 13th forward, and I don't mean that from the skill capacity, but from how often he plays because of the injuries. Because when he is in the lineup, he brings a lot of intangibles. He's a difference maker, not so much on the score sheet, but like in the physicality department and everything like that. So the contract they gave Carrier was fair for what he brings to the table, if you ask me. I wouldn't be surprised if he retires before it's over, unfortunately.
Let's get to some more comments here quickly, and then I'll let you go on your discussion about Walker and Slavin that you said you wanted to do.
Yes.
And then we'll get up out of here.
And that'll be quick too. I've got all that stuff pulled up.
Okay. Something that Crispy Crawfish says, he can still host parties as a special advisor, talking about Burns. Yeah, but look, Burns isn't going to stop until he gets that record. Until he's the Iron Man, until he beats Phil Kessel, he's not going to stop unless he physically can't.
Boy, that's a dichotomy if I ever heard one.
What?
Because so you know how Burns is like super fit and really like,
Yeah.
and then Phil Kessel's not, even though that's not his
Yeah.
fault. It's because of the steroids he was on. But Hot Dog Phil versus guy who goes out and hunts and kills his own food, competing for the longest Ironman streak in the NHL. It's funny to me.
You know, look, whether you agree with it or whether you don't, and I know people say there needs to be an understanding that he's not. No, there's no way Brent Burns is going to give up his Ironman streak. There's just not, and there's no coach in the NHL, whether they're named Rod Brind'Amour or something else, is going to ask him to do that.
Yeah, and he's worked really hard for that. He's played through some really egregious stuff. So like that's why I'm saying if he really wants to continue that, he might have to go somewhere else, but no coach is going to stop him from doing that.
No.
And that's why it's like people are like, oh, the Ironman streak needs to be off the table. I'm like, well, then he's going to go play somewhere else.
Yeah,
like
as long as he's playing, it's not going to be off the table. So
no.
And if I were him, it would be very important to me too. And it would be to you, whoever thinks that as well.
Yes.
Matthew P, I just don't trust Burns to go completely to the shutdown guy. Who says he has to be, though? He doesn't have to be a full shutdown guy. Like I think us as a fan base have this, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody or say that whatever. I'm just saying my thoughts on this are, I think us as a fan base are so structured in Rod's system as of having a shutdown guy and then a puck moving guy, and that's the only way we can do it. I don't know. I think I don't think it has to be a quote unquote shutdown guy and a quote unquote puck. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just think if they both just, I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Well, if he's playing less minutes, which is what it sounds like would be happening if he were to come back, then if you take the fatigue factor out of it, I think a lot of his mistakes will go away. If you take the tougher matchups out of it, a lot of his mistakes will go away, or they'll be reduced. They'll be mitigated. And then not to mention, it's like, let's say you have an injury, Sean Walker's out for a few games, then, Burns being up there for a few games is not a bad thing with Slavin.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the other things about it. It's like if everyone's excited about Nikishin being on the power play. He might not be handed the keys to power play 2 on day 1. He's got to learn, because that's one of the reasons you're always reluctant to take a power play quarterback off when you mix up your power plays, because it's a difficult position. It's a specific skill set. And if you change who that guy is, that can throw the 4 guys in front of him off drastically.
Yeah. A couple more comments and then we're going to let you go. Sound the Siren says Father Time never loses. Just saying. That's true. However, if there's one exception, it's this guy.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion. All right. So Brandon, go talk about your Sean Walker and Jacob Slavin pairing, and then we'll wrap up and call it a night here.
All righty. So a lot of people, when I posted something in regards to Sean Walker being the best person to put with Slavin, not only from a cap space saving standpoint, but also from a skill point, they were talking about, well, he's never had more than 24 points in a season, all this other stuff. And I'm like, okay, hold on. Let's think about this for a second. One, when Tony DeAngelo played with Jacob Slavin, he had 51 points, 64 games played. Only 22 of those points came 5-on-5, and not all of those were with Slavin. If you put someone like Sean Walker with Slavin, who has another gear offensively that we haven't really seen yet, I think that you're looking at someone who could potentially have 35, 40 points, 5-on-5. He won't be on the power play. He'll kill penalties with Slavin. So that way you have that fluidity with those guys playing 5-on-5 together, then killing penalties together. And they're your first shift after the conclusion of a power play where the other team is putting their best guys on the ice trying to, get that 2 minutes that they were a man down back. Now, I think that you having them play together, that pair can pull the really heavy minutes in the game critical situations. And the place where Sean Walker's offense is going to come from, it's going to come from 3 things. One, it's going to come from outlet passes, because he's shown he's really good at that. That outlet pass that he set up that eventually led to Svechnikov's series winning goal against the Capitals. That's going to become a much, much more frequent thing with him playing with someone like Slavin. They're going to possess the puck a lot, that pair will. The second thing that will come from is from him joining the Rush. He will get a lot of primary assists that way. He's going to turn a lot of 2-on-2s into 3-on-2s, 2-on-2s into 3-on, or, you know, he's going to join the Rush in a lot of situations and create odd man situations where there wasn't one before, because he skates really well. He's fast, and he's good when he does have possession of the puck at finding open ice when he's going north and south. The third thing that's going to happen there, he's going to drive the middle of the ice in a lot of situations, and he's going to score more goals that way. So I think if you put Slavin with Walker, he will have a career year, both offensively and defensively, and I think that he will eclipse 35 points 5-on-5. Or we'll just say even strength, because they would be out there in 4-on-4 matching minor situations as well. I think that he would eclipse 35 points, potentially 40, if he's with Slavin, and he would be the best partner that Slavin has had since 22-23 Brent Burns, and nobody can say that pairing wasn't good.
Yeah.
So
you're saying just 5-on-5 points.
5-on-5 points, yeah.
Right. Which is really good.
That would be really good, but I absolutely could see Sean Walker eclipsing 35 points if he plays all 82 games with Slavin at even strength. I think he absolutely could do that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's the route we're going. If we saw it in I think it was the playoffs. Yeah, we saw in the playoffs, he was, before his injury, he's playing so well. He was getting minutes with Slavin. We saw it. And I think there's a reason, but yeah. Okay. Well, I think that does it for tonight, for, our first part of our off-season series. We're going to come back, hopefully in the off-season. I know we've been kind of inactive, but, lately, but I'd like to keep doing these weekly, but at least every week and a half. And, I think there's going to be plenty of stuff to talk about this offseason, whether it be, free agency and or trades or, the draft or whatever. I think there's going to be plenty to talk about. You were going to say something?
Yeah. Speaking of the draft, tomorrow night at 8:30, our friend Matthew P. and I, we will be doing a stream where we're going to talk about 5 particular prospects that we think the Hurricanes could draft. It's going to be pretty detailed. We're going to be talking about primarily a guy named Mason West, who I think the Hurricanes could draft and develop into a really, really good top 6 center or we'll say at least a middle 6 center over the course of time. Big kid, skates really well, very fast.
I know the name.
I think that's if he's available when the Hurricanes pick in the first round, I think that's who they should get.
Yeah. All right. Looking forward to checking that out. Yeah, but hey, look, appreciate everybody joining us live. All you guys that support us and interact, and our loyal, listeners here and friends or whatever. I don't know what to call them. Yeah, I appreciate all you guys. I get, I mainly run the Caniac Sessions X account, and you might see me like get into arguments with some of these trolls every now and then. It's just because I get mad sometimes. And if I ever snap at anybody on here, I apologize in advance, but I don't think I do. I think it's mostly like trolls or people that, anyway, I'm rambling. But yeah, I appreciate everybody. I appreciate everybody that comes in here and listens and has this discussion on X and wherever else. I really do. And yeah, on behalf of AB and Brandon, I'm Griff. This is Caniac Sessions. Check out Brandon, his YouTube account at The Warning Take, also on X. I'm sure everybody's familiar. But if you're just, happen to find this video on YouTube for the first time, check out Brandon at The Warning Take. Tons of great stuff over there. Some great analysis, breakdowns, during the season, pre-games, post-games, all kinds of good stuff. So check that out. Check us out on X at Caniac Sessions and also at The Warning Take. And, yeah, going to be a good off season. J-Dub, you have a great weekend too, brother. I appreciate you.
I'm excited about this off season. I haven't been this excited about an off season in a long time.
Yeah. Since the last one, right?
Oh, no, the last one was kind of there.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, appreciate it. Had fun. And yeah, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Again, we're not doing the audio only anymore. This is it. This is the only way you get us now on YouTube and X. So subscribe, share, tell somebody about us. Y'all have a good Saturday night and Sunday. We'll catch you next week. Yeah. So we'll see you in session 80. Bye.
Bye.